Like every hot new horror film, the Pope's Exorcist purports to be based on a true story. Oftentimes, these are exaggerations and wild misinterpretations of history. But in Gabriele Amorth's case, the truth might be stranger than fiction. Welcome back to Dark Frontier. Father Amorth's real-life story is fascinating. He took on not only thousands of exorcisms, but what he called a conspiracy within the Vatican itself. And of course, there's the shocking story of what would be his final exorcism. Father Amorth allegedly performed thousands of exorcisms in his 30 years as the exorcist of the Diocese of Rome until his death in 2016. He also founded the International Association of Exorcists, Warriors of God, who train priests in how to properly wage war against agents of hell itself, battling numerous alleged demons and manifestations of the devil himself. Amorth's most famous, or infamous, remarks were that the devil was not only real, but fully alive and operating in Rome, even suggesting that a cabal of satanic elites within the Vatican itself were responsible for the mysterious disappearance of a young girl in 1983, just 2 years before his appointment within the Vatican. But Amorth's story would continue with an intriguing crossover, straight out of a Hollywood mashup, and a battle so fierce it's purportedly still raging long after his death. With Sony Pictures' new film The Pope's Exorcist now playing, starring Russell Crowe as Father Amorth, the movie takes some interesting interpretations of Amorth's life. The case of the possessed Henry at the infamous abbey is actually an amalgamation of many of Father Amorth's stories from his memoirs. Was there really an abbey? A conspiracy within the Catholic Church? Was Rosaria real? While most blogs and news outlets give you the right answer, no. These were nods to the real things Father Amorth wrote about in his books, things the Catholic Church may not want people talking about. For example, Amorth actually did believe there was a vast and insidious conspiracy at play within the Vatican involving a satanic infiltration of the Catholic Church itself. The truth is far more disturbing than the movie suggests. The film also follows Amorth's battle against a vengeful demon named Asmodeus, who has a personal grudge against the man. And one of Amorth's final cases in real life also involved a wrathful demon, but the outcome to that one may shock you. Gabriele Amorth was born in Modena, Italy on May 1st, 1925, and grew up in a devout Catholic family. After completing his studies, he joined the Society of St. Paul, a religious congregation dedicated to spreading the gospel through the media. Amorth's studies and his godly lifestyle were interrupted, of course, by the outbreak of World War II in Italy. During World War II, Father Gabriele Amorth served the Italian resistance movement as a soldier for 2 years. Father Amorth's exact role within the army is not clear, nor is his combat record, if any existed. He eventually returned to Italy, where he resumed his studies for the priesthood. Father Amorth never publicly spoke about his experiences in the army, and it's unclear how his time in the military may have influenced his later work as an exorcist, and his views on war and violence. In 1954, Father Amorth was ordained a priest and was assigned to work as a teacher and writer at the Society of St. Paul's publishing house. He spent several years in this role, but one book in the 1970s would change Amorth's life forever. In 1976, Irish Catholic author Malachi Martin's book, Hostage to the Devil, The Possession and Exorcism of 5 Living Americans, would be released, detailing the first-hand accounts and the struggles of 5 individuals allegedly possessed by Satan. Father Amorth said that after reading the book he felt called to become an exorcist. He said he believed there was a real need for the practice of exorcism within the church, and that many people were suffering from demonic possession or influence without receiving the help they needed. In 1985, he was appointed the official exorcist of the Diocese of Rome. But he was already too late to save one particular soul, but that will have to wait. In 1994, Amorth assembled the International Association of Exorcists as an organization of Catholic priests and bishops dedicated to promoting the practice of exorcism within the Catholic Church. Membership in the IAE is restricted to Catholic priests and bishops who have been approved by their local bishop and who have completed a rigorous training program in the practice of exorcism. The organization has members in countries around the world. The organization has been outspoken about the need for the Church to take a more active role in what they call combating the forces of evil, and it has been critical of what it sees as a lack of attention to the issue within the Church. Their sparse website has the organization's Latin creed next to a portrait of the Virgin Mary and a section reserved for membership login. Details about the organization likewise are hard to find, except for a brief report from 2000 that the organization held about 200 members. One of the most famous cases that Father Amorth was involved in was the exorcism of a young woman known only as Maria in the 1990s. Maria had reportedly been possessed by a demon for several years, and her family had sought help from numerous priests and exorcists before turning to Father Amorth. He performed several exorcisms on Maria, which were detailed in his 1999 book An Exorcist Tells His Story. Another notable case from the book involved a man known as Marco, who was possessed by multiple demons. Father Amorth worked with Marco for several years, performing numerous exorcisms and working to free him from the demon's influence. In addition to individual cases, Father Amorth also served group exorcisms, where multiple people were present and in need of spiritual intervention. He believed that group exorcisms could be effective in cases where there was a high degree of spiritual oppression, and he often performed them in the presence of other priests and laypeople. Amorth held firm in his belief that evil was evolving and infiltrating multiple facets of life for both the religious faithful and everyday citizens, and that this infiltration was not only deep inside the Vatican, but had been there for years. And he finally revealed his theories on a chilling 1980s disappearance that would draw international attention and open a long-since chilled case. Emanuela Orlandi disappeared on her way home after a flute lesson in Rome on June 23, 1983. Numerous theories followed her disappearance, from KGB operatives to domestic terrorists taking a hostage. The Vatican had never officially investigated the girl's disappearance. In 2012, just 3 years before his death, Amorth told La Stampa News in Italy that a girl who went missing in 1983 was one of the clearest examples of true evil being alive in the heart of the Catholic religion. Parties were organized with a Vatican gendarme acting as the recruiter of the girls. The network involved diplomatic personnel from a foreign embassy to the Holy See. I believe Emanuela ended up a victim of this circle. While Amorth never spoke of this during his rise within the church, it cannot be ignored that this event happened just before his appointment. In 2013, just days after his election, Pope Francis met with Orlandi's family after a mass and told them confidently that Emanuela was in heaven now, despite the Vatican maintaining for years that it was not involved in the matter at all and had no idea any of the details surrounding the event. Then in October 2022, a Netflix documentary about the case entitled Vatican Girl had featured an interview with an anonymous woman who was one of Emanuela's close friends. She disclosed that Emanuela had told her that someone close to the Pope had molested her shortly before her disappearance. In December 2022, Italian journalist Alessandro Ambrosini published a recording from 2009 of a former member of the Italian organized crime syndicate Banda della Magliana, stating that Emanuela was kidnapped at the request of the Vatican to cover up a scandal. In May 2016, 4 months before his death, Father Amorth had a particular guest accompany him on a particularly brutal exorcism. his final one. That day, he was accompanied by film director William Friedkin, director of the 1973 film The Exorcist. He accompanied Amorth and detailed his experience in an editorial piece for Vanity Fair magazine, which was published 1 month after Amorth's death. Rosa was described as a beautiful woman in her 30s that looked like an Italian film star, accompanied by her elderly parents and her boyfriend. Along with them was a man named Roberto in the story, whose sister had been exorcised by Amorth before. One day in Mass, he saw Rosa collapse to the floor in convulsions, the same way his sister had. That's when he introduced her to Father Amorth. That day was her 9th exorcism. Amorth and Rosa battled, with the demon inhabiting her claiming that it was 80 legions. "Leave! Leave her now!" Amorth roared as Rosa's demon insisted. "No, no, no!" Rosa passed out, awoke screaming, and slowly returned to normal. "Each time it feels like I'm becoming free. I can feel the devil suffering inside me," she said. Friedkin described Amorth as frail, but with a razor-sharp wit and a fierce sense of determination that seemed to make him years younger than he really was, which was 91 years of age at that time. Rosa's next date was set for July 4th, 2016. Friedkin, stating his determination to see this exorcism to the end, returned to Rome with his translator, only to find out that Rosa had postponed. Friedkin's translator spoke to Rosa on the phone and wanted to film her for his story on July 5th. Before visiting her, he consulted with Amorth. "Father Amorth told me that even when Rosa appears normal, she experiences mental suffering. After her 9th exorcism, there was some improvement, but she's not liberated. Perhaps it won't be me who is successful with her," he said softly. "There's someone who plants the seed and someone else who harvests. And Jesus reminds us it is he who sets people free, not the exorcists." Rosa and Friedkin exchanged several calls. She would become aggressive and violent, cancel, then call back calm and collected to backtrack on the cancellation and plan another date. Finally, it was decided that Friedkin would meet her in Altari, a small town roughly 90 miles south of Rome. They settled on an old church, and the experience left the director shaken to his core. "We were trapped in a living nightmare. Just within the entrance, Rosa, her mother, and Giuliano were sitting on dirty plastic thrift shop chairs. Rosa was growling and screaming, struggling to break free, but this was not Rosa. It was a monstrous, ugly, despairing creature with a gravelly voice filled with anger and anguish. It was the voice of the damned. She was far worse than during the exorcism, but there was no priest to control her behavior. The church was otherwise empty, but for this tableau of horror. Rosa and her family all seemed erratic, possessed. It seemed Father Amorth was right. It was not just a possession of one, but an infestation of an entire family. They threatened to kill Friedkin, track his family down, and hurt them too. Friedkin protested. This was a documentary about Amorth that needed to be seen. Upon returning to Rome, Friedkin was more determined than ever to see Amorth battle Rosa's demon and the ones that seemed to surround her. But unfortunately, Amorth became ill. He was having difficulty breathing and was admitted to a local hospital. He would die 2 months later. Mourners 1,000 over attended his funeral, Friedkin noted, including several people he had exorcised and saved. They approached his coffin and kissed it, some asking for one final blessing. Roberto, the man who had brought Rosa to Amorth, told Friedkin that before his passing, Amorth had said to him, "Do you know why the devil is afraid of me? Because I'm uglier than he is." But even in death, Amorth's story wasn't finished. At the time of writing the Vanity Fair piece, Friedkin said he was contacted by Robert, who told him that an exorcist in Venafro, near Altari, had attempted to exorcise the monstrous Rosa. In the middle of what seemed to be a losing battle, the exorcist called upon Amorth to aid him from beyond the grave. Rosa was taken aback. She began to flail and to scream. Friedkin's documentary, The Devil and Father Amorth, released a year later in 2017. One has to wonder, was Ascension the final weapon in Father Amorth's holy arsenal? Or are the devil's claws still embedded into Rosa and her family?